Well, hello, and welcome to Real Talk with the Cummings.
Right.
Mark Angelo.
And I'm Lena.
The Cummings.
That's right. The Cummings. Been the Cummings for about,
Gosh, we celebrated our anniversary, July 16th.
a year and 2 months, right?
Something like that.
According to my California map.
So anyway, tonight's show, it should be an interesting one. There's a lot of topics we want to cover regarding, I don't know how many of you have actually heard the term anima and animus. I know it's new to me. I was like,
yeah, I mean, I had heard something about the anima, but I never heard about the animus.
Except for the anima that I do when I'm cleansing, but it has nothing to do with that.
That's been a while since we've done an anima.
Anyway, it's really interesting, the whole concept of gender dysphoria, transitioning, being born in the wrong body. These are terms that have been thrown around a lot in the past, gosh, I want to say 2 or 3 years more so than before. I mean, we spoke yesterday to a detransitioner by the name of Philip
Porter.
And he thought at one point that it was very rare, and all of a sudden, every corner you turn, there's talk about transitioning, transgender children being born in the wrong body and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that's what's happening to our world and society, is that we are missing certain marks, certain like developmental marks that we are not hitting. And, we were watching this thing yesterday about how Cummings man or something, how they had to climb up mountains and trees and worried about being eaten and finding food.
Our ancestors that
Right.
lived before and stuff, and eventually became Homo sapiens.
Homo something on that. Not to be related with homosexual or
no. It's right before Homo erectus.
Something like that. Anyway, I believe that the type of life that humans are living now is very synthetic and very unnatural, hence all these neurological impairments, mental illnesses, and so forth and so on, and not actually hitting the marks of our developmental stages and our spiritual stages. So we're going to go into that anima and animus thing in a little bit, but first we want to talk a little bit more about hormones. And we found this particular article that I found interesting. I love to learn. Learning to me is growth.
Well, you went to school for what, 7 years or
6 years, yeah.
6 years.
Yeah. And learning is, to me, there's knowledge and wisdom and things that helps us evolve as a person, not only mentally, but also spiritually, and not to be confused with religion. Anyway, the actual article is called A Perspective on Male Hormones, the Yin and Yang of Estrogen and Testosterone. And believe it or not, it's important to have that perfect balance in a male-bodied individual or a female-bodied individual.
So like too much of one and not enough of the other throws that beautiful, I mean, the Asians really depicted it really nicely with that picture, of the crescent kind of look to it and stuff like that. And just how it's a very, I don't know, maybe it's like the sun, how close it is to the earth. If it was like a centimeter further away, we would freeze. Yeah. And if it was a centimeter closer, we would, burn up. I think that's pretty much similar to what happens in our bodies with hormones.
Yes, and this is why we get so sick, because there's a bunch of what we call endocrine disrupting chemicals in our environment, and complements of oil companies, companies that are producing products and just polluting our oceans and our environment and the foods that we're eating. I mean, pretty much, if you look around and see how overweight, frail, and that kind of sounds overweight and frail, but people that are overweight are not healthy. They're actually malnourished. And you look at people's skins and their hairs. I mean, we are malnutritioned to the glories, and we're fatter than ever.
Yeah, I mean, they said that, like, I think it's 4 states in the United States that are 35% of the people are overweight.
Yes.
And 22 states where, like, there's like 21% of the people are obese.
Exactly.
So we're becoming a nation that's known for being fat more than anything else. Only 5% of people in the United States even exercise 30 minutes a day.
And that's pretty sad. What people don't realize that we are meant to be active and we're not meant to be fat. Fat storage creates estrogen production. And estrogen, estradiol to be exact, is very harmful to the health of our species. We need some, but too much, whether you're born male or female, can be a catastrophic effect. Now let's go into this article, which I thought was pretty interesting. Everyone knows that testosterone is the essence of maleness. People that are born male body, they need testosterone. Okay, it is what makes men feel better, look better, and perform better, both physically and sexually. But most people would be surprised to learn that estrogen also plays a key role in men's sexuality and is essential to their cardiovascular and circulatory health, as well as their muscle mass and bone strength.
Just as women need a small amount of testosterone, men need a small amount of estrogen. The ancient Chinese concept of yin-yang, where 2 seemingly opposite things complement each other to make a whole, depicts this delicate hormone balance that affects not only our physical and emotional well-being, but our sexual health as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop right here and talk about what is the #1 drug being sold in the market right now.
Erectile dysfunction stuff?
Like Viagra and Cialis, right. Young men that are meant to be viral, that are meant to be at the prime of their life, can't even get it up. Pardon, the French here, but why is that? And why is it that all these individuals are claiming to be born in the wrong body, when that used to be something very odd and far between? All of a sudden, whether it's young gay boys that are thinking that they're born in the wrong body, or middle-aged men, or really over the hill men are saying they're born in the wrong body. Something is going on with their endocrine system. With all the disruption, with all the amount of excess fat, with the imbalance, they're having way too much estradiol versus the testosterone that they should have in their body. So that could be barrel of men and retards on you, Jane, that kind of thing. We're not seeing that. We're seeing more and more men are being demasculinized in our environment.
I think that, that there's so many things that are contributing to that, but we've talked about it before. But there's a lot of things in our environment that are contributing to that, and people don't even know it.
Exactly.
I mean, you could be drinking a bottle of plastic, a bottle of water in that plastic that is emitting estrogenic compounds in it and stuff, and you don't even know it. I mean, it's like, what are the soldiers that were in Iraq and in Kuwait? I mean, they had like truckloads of these bottled water,
and when it heated up,
that
creates, it's like,
you wonder why. I mean, I'm not going to say that that's the reason that there's so many transgender, identifying people in the military or with a military background, but there's so many things like that the environment is causing a lot of these changes chemically in the brain. Estrogen does that, right?
And then not having enough testosterone to give the signal, because like the article said earlier, men require some estrogen, but if it overpowers their natural testosterone production, it's going to create a little, deviation in the way they think and feel and act.
I mean, I guess trans women are really at a disadvantage at this point, because if you transition later, as so many, I think the average age of a transitioning MTF is 35 to 45 years of age.
That's
So we're talking about, you know, these people are now past the point of their height of testosterone production. So from there on out,
it's all downhill.
it's all downhill. So what happens with women is that obviously they go opposite, where their testosterone or androgen production actually increases as their estrogen production decreases, right?
Exactly.
And then natal born males, they have the same thing, but the opposite happens.
Right. And that's why they get sick. And I truly believe that's why men die before women, because what makes them viral is going downhill. And now they're getting excess estrogen, because a lot of times testosterone they've had in their body aromatizes, which means converts into estrogen.
It's apparently some enzyme that becomes more plentiful as men age, the aromatase enzyme. I don't know how that works in medical terminology, but I guess it's something that's produced
and it converts it, and it's needed, but it's almost like the switch that's gone array. It's gone crazy. So it's producing more and more, and it's because of all the estrogenic compounds in our environment.
But it's like also age, you know, where the body is really starting to wear itself out. So this sensor that's able to click and adjust our estrogen levels and our testosterone levels is now really kind of, maybe it kind of loses its ability to regulate as well. You know, like a simple, like the sprinkler's stuck or something, you know, and you got to fix it.
Or the body does it on purpose, because as we're going to talk about in a little bit regarding the animus and all that stuff, there's a time when men no longer need to be the Tarzan, and their developmental stage is going to change from a more nurturing
to a more
nurturing than this, like, I protect the camp, I have the spear. And I think that what's happening in our environment is the mixed signals are being taken, and instead of realizing that it's men now, instead of being so battle prone, are going to start behaving a little bit more nurturing. And instead, we're taking that as, I was born in the wrong body, I need to transition to a woman. Anyway, what does testosterone do? Well, before we go any further with how estrogen and testosterone complement each other, because they do, let's review the various functions of testosterone in men's health. Testosterone's effects can be grouped into two categories, androgenic and anabolic. Androgenic refers to the masculinizing or virilization effects, including the growth of facial hair and body hair, sex organ development, deepening of the voice, and male pattern baldness. The anabolic effects are those that stimulate the growth of muscle, bone, and red blood cells.
I like that anabolic part.
Yeah, well, that's why, like,
anabolic steroids,
right? That's why
weightlifters take.
And you get big, and that's why we see FTMs, female transsexuals, female to male transsexuals, start getting muscles, and they start getting the facial hair, and your red blood cells does elevate, which is not good. That's why it's good to have blood work done, because too much red blood cell could create clots, heart attacks, strokes. I mean, we're playing with really dangerous stuff here, and people don't realize how dangerous, because it's not regulated appropriately. You're just giving this huge amount that's steady, and the body's not able to properly process it.
I mean, hormones you would think would be known to be like the keys to life, really, because I mean, as your hormones levels go, so goes your health, right?
Exactly.
So I mean,
especially if you're out of balance,
right?
Because then disease, which means out of balance, you're not no longer in homeostasis. So we are being given a pretty lethal medication that is not understood properly. And people say, well, it's safe to use hormones. No, it's not, because your body has a key point amount depending on the sex that you were born as. If you're born female, you're only allowed a certain amount of testosterone in your body. You put more than that, you're going to start getting an excess of estrogen, because testosterone in excess amount, and the body's going to say, female, too much testosterone, let's convert more estrogen. Well, the estradiol that you're seeing in the female body of excess is going to create a lot of problems, the same problem that it creates in males.
Well, I was just wondering, because, cars and stuff, they're meant to run on unleaded fuel, and there are cars that are meant to run on diesel fuel, or there are those cars that are that, that, what is it, that kind of GMO type kind of fuel and stuff, that E85 or whatever it is. You can't put E85 in a regular car,
no, you mess
because
it up.
it'll mess up the transmission. So, or whatever it is that gets messed up. But I think that hormones sort of play like that, because I mean, it's like men are meant to consume or to be regulated by a certain hormone, and women are supposed to be regulated by another hormone.
Exactly.
So the body, of course can process both, but it processes one better than the other, right?
Exactly, because of the receptors that, according to the chromosome, the DNA in your body, when you're born, it has its set receptors and guidelines. It's like a computer or a car, you can't put a BMW part into a Toyota, because they're not meant for each other. So it's the same thing. And although dysphoria, our emotional mind or whatever it is, thinks that we should be one way, our body has a totally different plan.
Well, it's the crazy thing is, as I was looking at anatomy images and stuff just the other day about really how different the male anatomy is from the female anatomy, especially in the area of where the reproductive organs go, and just how, just reconstructing a penis to look like a vagina or something, a penile inversion is what it really is.
Yeah.
It doesn't do justice to what women really have there, because when we're talking the vaginal canal, we're talking about the uterus, we're talking about all these different, the fallopian tubes, all these different things that combine to make the body of the female the body of a female. And I mean, no matter as much as I want to have that or did in the past, guys just have a much more simple type of anatomy down there that, it's really kind of like the no frills version,
right?
Or you guys got that.
Well, because we're meant to carry the baby,
and it's like, we're talking about, there's no canal for men, there's no uterus for men. I mean, we have a prostate.
Yeah.
We have seminal vesicles.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a penis, and I mean, there's really not much to it. It's really kind of a simple cut and dry thing. But estrogen works in that beautiful creation of the female anatomy to feed it and give it what it needs so that it can support life. Whereas, even, I know that there's like trans women out there are like so exciting when they first start getting on hormones. They're like, my breasts are growing and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but they're growing for really no purpose.
Right.
Because you're never going to feed a child with that.
And
you're never going to carry a child in your womb. I mean,
and breasts were generally created to feed a child.
Right.
And, if you look at men nowadays with the excess amount of estrogen and how fat they get, all men nowadays pretty much have breasts. Gynecomastia.
You know what the sad thing is, that FTMs think that they have gynecomastia.
That's crazy. That's because
they call what is a breast, which is a gynecomastia problem.
Coping skills for individuals that are trying to cope in a society that has deemed them abnormal because they're too much of a masculine woman or too much of a feminine man, have created this byproduct, which is now packaged and sold as transgenderism. And, it's a coping skill that has been fed by the medical community for a profit, but it is not a healthy coping skills. There's other ways, and I want to create shows to teach people other ways to deal with their dysphoria, because there are other ways. This has been a fast food chain. Hey, let's make lots of money. Let's just cattle them in, but it's not the right way. And it really solves nothing. And we're regressing because we're going to a different type of topic here. But, we've got to be careful with these hormones, and that's what we're getting at. Anyway,
the male body systems affected by testosterone include the brain, voice, hair, muscles and fat, organs, bones, and libido. The effects of testosterone on these body systems differ during each stage of life.
Okay, during fetal development, testosterone and its metabolites, it's called DHT, are necessary for the formation of the internal and external male genitalia. During puberty, testosterone triggers a deepening of the voice, which is what FTMs go through, prompts the growth of facial and body hair, stimulates sexual behavior, and initiates sperm production.
In adult males, testosterone is necessary to maintain muscle mass and strength, bone mass, normal hair growth, libido, and sperm production.
Determining what is normal is a critical aspect of hormone therapy so that a deficiency or excess can be treated appropriately. Unfortunately, a baseline representing the normal healthy state is rarely available, and the average age-related decline in male testosterone is so slow that it can be difficult to recognize an imbalance.
The manifestations of such an imbalance typically depend on the person's age, as well as the severity and duration of the imbalance. The reality of a male menopause or andropause or menopause is gradually gaining recognition. Men do experience hormonal changes as they age, and they usually begin to notice these changes around age 40.
I'm going to go ahead and stop it there because that's, very key point. You said the average age of
Transitioners, male to female, is 35 to 45.
Okay, so we might be seeing that instead of being born in the wrong bodies, that decline in testosterone, spike up of estradiol, men are thinking, oh, I'm a woman, that kind of thing. I'm serious. I mean, I know that it's...
Well, I mean, the correlations are there.
Exactly.
You have changes around age 40, and you have
excess estrogen in the environment, which are being, and then men are overweight. If you look at the majority of MTFs, they were usually fat men. They weren't happy with it being fat.
Unless they were younger.
Yeah, well, but I'm saying around that age.
Oh, around that age, yes.
Around this age. I'm looking at, we're not talking about the younger gay man who feels that their life will be better if they became a woman. They'll have a lot more straight men in their lives. And it's the cool thing to do right now, know. And then you've got the younger kids that their mother has a hormonal imbalance. And you usually look at a lot of the kids nowadays that are claiming to be, I'm a girl or whatever. It's because they're the last child, the hormones messed up in the mother, and the child has excess estrogen, not enough testosterone, but it doesn't mean that the child was born in the wrong body. It's being looked totally. But anyway, around that age, so that's a very important thing to notice, that changes around age 40 starts to kick in.
However, just as women can begin menopause at an earlier age, men can begin to experience these changes sooner than that as well.
Between the age of 25 and 50, a man's testosterone level decreases by approximately 50%. That's a big decrease. While his estrogen level, specifically estradiol, increases by 50%. The yin-yang balance still exists, but its shifts result in a variety of symptoms.
Yikes.
Okay, what
50%?
are that's a lot. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's a key. That's why when I saw, we saw this particular article, I thought, oh my God, this is like, why aren't the medical professionals looking at this? No, it's easier to sell the other package, So what are the symptoms of testosterone deficiency? A testosterone deficiency can be associated with a number of potentially confusing symptoms, which may lead to misdiagnosis or simply remain unexplained.
Dr. Thierry Hertog believes that a hormone deficiency should be considered when searching for the cause of any chronic or recurrent condition. Because testosterone affects so many different body systems, the symptoms of testosterone deficiency can span a wide range, including changes in physical characteristics, cardiovascular and circulatory problems, mental and emotional troubles, and sexual dysfunction. In addition, the age-related decline of testosterone can accelerate by many factors, including excess weight, especially abdominal obesity.
Yeah, we see a lot of that. Insulin resistance.
Low HDL cholesterol.
Low bone density.
Illness or disease.
stressful events and lack of being able to cope with them,
depression or mental illness,
reduced sexual activity. So as you will see, these factors can be both a cause and an effect of testosterone deficiency. So let's start this right here. So
let's go back to that list.
Yeah, that list was
Wow.
very impressive here and very scary, actually. So, you have decreased testosterone, which we're seeing, and then an increase of estradiol. You're going to see excess weight gain. Okay, you're going to see insulin resistant, which means you can become diabetic. You're not processing carbs the way that you should anymore because you require testosterone to do that. Most of the time, women are a lot chubbier than men because women have lower testosterone levels. Women are meant to carry babies, and they're meant to be a little more pudgy, fatter, in places like their breasts and their thighs and their hips and all that stuff.
Hips for carrying those kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when we're seeing a lot of men within the ages of 35 and 55 or 45 that are starting to have a lot of health issues. And they're starting to have a lot of depression or mental illness.
We were just watching, we like to watch these game shows like American Ninja Warrior, CrossFit stuff. And there was one story about a guy who had pretty much kind of let himself go. And, he really just started to see that he was falling apart. Mm-hmm. And that he was, they said, one cheeseburger away from a heart attack.
Oh, yeah.
And he committed himself to focusing on getting better, getting fitter, getting healthier, because he wanted to live. He wanted to, make it for his kids' sake. So, sometimes the things that trigger people to make changes in their lives, are these events where they realize, oh my gosh, if I don't fix it, I'm going to die. And it usually hits at around midlife
crisis. And there's a reason behind them, which talks about the Animus in the middle age crisis and what we're supposed to do during that time. It's nothing about changing your gender.
But it's like low bone density. It's like, so early onset osteoporosis potentially.
Yeah, diabetes, a bunch of cholesterol problems. I mean, all sorts of depression and mental illness, which, when you hear a lot of the stories of trans women say, well, I'm suicidal, I'm depressed, it's because you have low testosterone. Nothing to do with the other. It's every man has a woman inside of them. And again, that's something I'm talking about. But, has nothing to do with being born in the wrong body, that if you don't get to live your life as the girl that you think you are, you're going to die, commit suicide, you're depressed. You're depressed because you have low testosterone. You want to fix your problem? Go get some HRT treatment of testosterone. Start working out, eat right, and you'll see a total different change in your body.
Now, stressful events have a way of throwing someone even further into depression and, like thinking that they have to make some massive, major, monumental changes to their lives. Because I know that there are many stories out there of trans women that they hit rock bottom because maybe they were, let go at their job, or they had to endure a divorce or several divorces, and they were like, and now these stressful events have caused them, to want to make these massive gender transition changes.
Definitely. And, 20 years ago, it wasn't marketed the way that it's marketed now. So people that are going through this menopause, decrease of androgen or testosterone, are getting overweight and sick and they're depressed. And, instead of being given the right tools, like, hey, stop eating the crap, work out, and here, have some testosterone to boost up, your whole libido, your mental state. I mean, what did Philip say? He's under testosterone therapy now, and he feels awesome.
Now, Philip is really interesting. We're hoping to get him as a guest on our show. And he lived as Phoebe for 32 years, transitioned back in
when he was 19.
And this person has lots to say.
Oh my gosh,
it's going to be an incredible show to watch, to see, because I mean, they have so much wisdom from living as an MTF for, for how many years?
And he had androgen sensitivity syndrome. He got tested, and that's why he goes, "Oh, I had low testosterone. That's why he felt the way that he did." After the years of living as a female, he started feeling sick. He started going through menopause. He was like, he was going to try to give himself a chance to be a man, because obviously, it's like the inner voice that was speaking to him, that inner voice that I've talked a lot about. I'm not really a woman. I'll never be a woman. Let me get a go at being a man. Started taking testosterone. He feels great. Says his mental state, he's sharp, he's alert. His body is meant to have testosterone. He had low testosterone level when he was younger. And so what do we think? When we have low testosterone level, I need to be a woman. So let me give myself estrogen. You're killing yourselves by doing this. It's not solving anything at all. And it's only hurting you and others in the end. Anyway, adult males often go through physical changes as they grow older. And many of the changes can be attributed to the age-related decline in their testosterone level. As shown in the figure, well, we don't have the figure to show here. So these changes might include reduced body hair and a balding head, as well as decreased muscle mass with an increase in body fat, which affects their strength and physical abilities. And people get depressed with that.
I know for me, losing hair, when I turned like 20, it was like I was already like in my mid-20s or something, and I felt like, oh my gosh, it's falling off, and then by the time I hit 30, I was like, oh no, it's got like that David Letterman thing where it almost connects but not quite, and it was just so depressing. It's like having to live with the ball cap all the time and feeling like just not feeling good about yourself. You just feel ick about yourself, because here you are, you're supposed to be, in the throes of life, at the top of the world, and you're losing your hair. I know that's not a big deal for some people, and for a lot of people, compared to all the things that they go through and stuff with disease and illnesses and things like that, it's really not that big of a deal. But I mean, I don't know. For me, it was like a major.
Well, that seems to be the MO with trans women. It's very visual. They want to be known as beautiful. They want to change. Like I read something, they want to be 100% passable, and they want everything to look just so, and the hair and the this and the that. It's like a project. That's not what being a woman is all about.
Right.
The majority of women don't even have the time, because they're dealing with babies and husband and just, they are career women as well, and just they really don't have a lot of time for themselves.
When I was dealing with the stuff with my ex and stuff, I mean, it was like you have more clothes than I have in my closet. I mean, you have more. It's like you have more things than I do, and it's like I've never even been to a nail salon before. It's like I don't really care to go.
It's like because little girls are born, they go through the girl stage, and they grow into women. Trans women are men that are used to getting everything they want, and they want to conquer, and they want to do, and they want to grab, and they want to be, and they want to do this, and they want to look a certain way. And
I mean, but let's be fair though. I mean, trans men envy the hell out of men, because they want that privilege, that power, that prestige, that that place in society that is afforded to men, unfortunately, so many times.
No doubt.
And it's like, what was it that article said? Trans women want to be beautiful, trans men want to be powerful.
Yeah.
And that's the dilemma that we find ourselves in, is that it's like the grass is always greener
on the other side.
Of the
So I got to always go, why would anybody want to be a woman when, men have all the power, they have the better body? I hated my body, as Marit said. In fact, I started taking, steroids and growth hormones when I was bodybuilding, so I could change my body, because it didn't matter how hard I trained. I changed it. I changed more than I bargained for. I changed my brain mentality and everything else. No matter how hard I trained prior to all that,
Wait, we have a question.
Oh, we do.
Mark, how do you explain the transgender former bodybuilders like the Croc, the guy that transitioned last year? Remember, he was a big buff bodybuilder, and then he says they must have a lot of testosterone.
Yeah, but a lot of that testosterone converts into estrogen. And that is the number one thing. That's why guys that are bodybuilding need to take what they call estrogen blockers, because the amount of testosterone in there is going to convert into estrogen. And that's the same thing with the military guys, the estrogenic stuff, you know, because they put stuff in the military. I know I was there. That just converts, you know, any kind of androgen will convert, aromatize into estradiol. And that's what's happening to a lot of the military, a lot of these really buff testosterone people. If you don't take estrogen blockers, you're going to get excess amount of estrogen. And that's going to create the same thing that we're talking about, endocrine disrupting chemicals. But yes, you are right. A lot of FTMs, and you see it. You see that guys are walking around with this attitude. You know,
I know.
You know, it's like
wow. Yeah. It's like every guy's supposed to be that way.
It's crazy. But when you're in that
stereotype
state of, I hate to use the word delusion, you know, you're trying to be the stereotypical guy. Well, and I was on to, hey, baby, you know, all that stuff. But, you know, when you start to evolve and mature and realize that this is really not solving anything, it's a great game for a while, but eventually, you know, you got to wake up and smell the roses. But it solves nothing. It solves absolutely nothing. And we're what?
So Jonas writes, hi, Lena. Yeah, I guess that's why steroid users get bitched.
Exactly. Gynecomastia is what they get. And, you know, a lot of, actually, the doctor who did my surgery said, you just gave me a great idea to treat the guys with gynecomastia. So he was going to start, you know, doing the same thing that he does with FTMs to genetically born men that have excess amount of estrogen.
I honestly think a lot of doctors, I'm not going to say all of them do, I just think they love to be mad scientists.
Oh, they do. And we are a great project for that.
I mean, I remember my oldest son, who's now in college, had a massive fracture of his leg. And the doctor was so excited after he finished the surgery. He was telling me about how he had screwed in this screw into this really healthy bone and how it just latched on. And it was really kind of gross to listen to, because he was like excited, you know, like sort of like Dr. what's his name, Dr. Norman Spack talked about, you know, these kids being transitioned in Denmark or wherever it was, and how it was like so exciting for him to see that this is possible. You know, it's like as if we're lab rats in some laboratory.
Scientists, they're mad scientists. They love to be the first doing a procedure, and you know, the first sexual assignment surgery was like, ooh,
let's do this.
Yeah, and it's like, folks, I'm sorry, but you know, it can't be done. They could attempt it. They could cosmetically try to make us into something we're not.
And that's what Philip said. I mean, taking it from a person who lived as a woman for 32 years. I mean, he said, you know, there was that inner voice that whenever I was around women, I just felt like I could never, my voice was telling me I could never be a woman.
Because you know, he was not raised as a girl. He didn't go through girlhood. I mean, there's a lot that we go through from the time we're born, or little girls, you know, I mean, a slew of things, the same thing as men. You go, I can never claim and know what a man, because I was not raised one. You know, I had nothing, like the first date, the first time I banged a girl, and you know, none of that stuff.
Until you were 38, you had
no idea. So who am I to think that, oh yeah, I'm a dude now? You know, I see these younger FTMs and they really think that they are. And you know, it's like, look, just own up to your gender expression, own up to your sex reality, love yourself, stop harming yourselves, because in the end, this solves absolutely nothing. It buys you some time of happiness and party, but even what was that Cinderella when the clock struck 12?
The pumpkin?
The pumpkin, I mean, the carriage turned back into the pumpkin, and the clothing, and so, you know.
Well, I mean, it's like, there was this one FTM that was on Facebook saying, I'm starting the new school year, I'm a male teacher, elementary school. What do males wear? And it's like, that right there is like, it's like, a male socialized as a male knows what a
what
male
to wear,
wears.
exactly.
Doesn't even worry about it. Doesn't even think twice.
That's a woman thing. It's like, oh my
about
God, what do I wear? They got me, I'm gonna, you know, it's like.
And then people are like, make sure you wear a button down and khakis and a tie. And
so
it's like,
they claim to be men, but they don't know the first thing how to be a man. They don't know the first thing how to deal with plumbers, like we talked about. Yeah, they don't know the first thing how to actually interact. You know, they go to a gym and they're like, oh my God, please don't look at me, don't talk to me, don't just, you know, it's like, so what is it? What kind of games are we playing here? You know? Anyway, who was?
I was reading.
You were reading? Okay. So
these changes might include reduced body hair and a balding head, as well as increased muscle mass with an increase in body fat, which affects their strength and physical abilities. They also often feel a decline in their overall energy and stamina. While these types of changes may be considered part of the normal aging process, they can also be accelerated by a testosterone deficiency and therefore slowed with hormone therapy.
You know how a lot of the MTF, after they have their SRS, what are they? It's like fatigued and tired and sick. They can never seem to get their immune system back up. They've just killed their endocrine system.
Yeah, and I also noticed that a lot of times when they are post-op transitioners, that they struggle with emotional things even more, and they have a less of a capacity to deal with things. It seems like
because the coping skill drops
from them.
What are we talking about? Decline in testosterone, the mental health, the ability to deal with stress, all that goes. So imagine when you just remove the testicles, which is what produces
the regulation system.
Yeah, you become, you know, it's like, yeah.
I mean,
there's a rocket science.
There's a trans woman who had to have the surgery, and she's from Great Britain, and she used to blog like crazy. She was a great writer. She's a musician, or I mean, she's an artist or something, and she's disappeared. Yeah, I mean, it's like she looked gone after the surgery. Had a picture.
Had complications.
Had complications. Yeah. Had problems even last year getting SRS, and this year got SRS, and then now she's just like, where did she go? It's like, I'm like asking post-op trans women, where are you? I mean, where do you disappear to?
I mean, just, you know,
it's like, where do you go?
Up because they don't have the drive anymore. They don't have the fire. And then they are not, like you said, a man will not admit when they fuck up, pardon the French. You know, they would go to their grave hurting and knowing that they made the worst mistake of their lives, but yet they will not go out there and tell the others.
No.
And then you've got the WPATH, and you've got all these people like threatening, don't you, I mean, this survey that just happened, 203 detransitioning females. The survey was created by the 22-year-old Kari, I think was her name. And they're not even giving it any publication or any promotion. WPATH doesn't want to hear about it because what happens when it's known that, oops, this is not really what we think it is, then there's a lot of money to be lost in a system that has been pushing this now as if it's the last Coca-Cola, you know? Anyway, because we're looking at cardiovascular, because testosterone is a muscle building hormone and the heart is a muscle with many receptor sites, go figure. Low testosterone level can lead to cardiovascular disease. According to the November 1999 issue of Life Extension magazine, testosterone is not only responsible for maintaining heart muscle protein synthesis, but is a promoter of coronary dilation and helps maintain a healthy cholesterol level. As a result of deficiency, leads to
elevated blood pressure,
increased insulin levels,
increased cholesterol and triglycerides,
diminished coronary artery elasticity,
weakening of the heart muscle,
increased abdominal fat, which further increases the risk of a heart attack. What do we see trans women after they've been on, and they get fat, very fat.
Yeah, do a lot of them do. The other area is mental. The mental and emotional problems associated with a testosterone deficiency are the easiest to overlook, especially since most men are reluctant to discuss these sorts of issues. Duh.
Yeah.
But they can be equally devastating. Life Extension reports that the following potential mental problems in response to low testosterone levels,
moodiness, emotionality.
touchiness, irritability,
Sounds like trans women to me. Great timidity.
inner unrest,
Reduced interest in surroundings.
loss of ability to concentrate,
Memory failure.
reduced intellectual agility,
Passive attitudes.
general tiredness,
Weak feeling.
hypochondria.
Yes.
What's hypochondria?
When they constantly think they have something going on with them.
Oh.
Like the
Oh,
one that
my
you're
thing
reading,
hurts.
yeah, that hurts, and they're gone. Yeah. Anyway, these symptoms, which are also often associated with depression, can usually be alleviated with testosterone therapy. Testosterone treatments have proven their value as a potential treatment of depression in men. Now, let's talk about sexual in the bedroom.
Well, it brought to mind a video that we just recently watched with a trans woman who's moving to LA and who has had the surgery, almost a year now since the surgery, and they had to have it. It was imperative, and it was so important, but I guess it wasn't important enough to make sure that they were properly doing all the things that the doctor had recommended for a trans woman to do in the area of dilation, so that now this person is like, well, it looks good still because I'm able to wear my bikini, but I've lost a good amount of depth to my vagina.
It's not a vagina, but to the area that the doctors created because they were not dilating. And, I own a real vagina, and I'm 52 years old, and I've never had to dilate to keep my vagina open because vaginas don't need dilation, don't need lubrication unless you get a hysterectomy. And then women tend to dry, or even with menopause, there's a little drying. But a real God-made vagina doesn't need dilation and doesn't lose depth. On the contrary, after you have babies, what comes through the vaginal canal, which is what a vagina really is kind of meant for besides the sex, it doesn't close up, and we don't have to dilate it for the rest of our lives.
You know what the sad thing that I found out, what the word vagina actually means, is a word that's very diminutive to women, and it's called a sheath for a sword. That's what they call a vagina.
Oh,
like
boy.
the definition, it's like something for the sword to go into. It's like the sheath where the sword fits itself into on the side of a male soldier.
And that's really sad. And that's a man that probably created that word. I mean, it just was misogynistic in all of its sense, because that's what trans women think a vagina is about, a fuckhole. Pardon the French, but
like I said, there's so much more to female anatomy than just a hole.
And it's very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Disrespectful to the species that is born XY and
XX.
I mean XX. I'm sorry. And it's not it's not at all. I mean, we all have mothers.
So it's like, so this was so important to this trans woman, yet it really wasn't, because it was really about some kind of a topical solution
to wear bikinis,
to be able to wear, aesthetically pleasing, tight-fitting clothes and shorts and dresses and, exercise, outfits and stuff. And it's like, wow.
Anybody else write something?
Jonas writes, it's like trans women calling themselves fishy when they seem passable. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
And it's all very autogynephilic or whatever. It shows the lack of respect that trans women actually have for women, and it's always that competition, and it's always that hatred, and you see it a lot in gay men, how they literally do dislike women because in their own mind they want to kind of and it's pretty sad stuff, because we should each own our born sex and try to be the best us that we can be, whether you're a feminine guy or a masculine woman, you know, there's no need to have to try to be something you're not, and cosmetic surgeries and hurting yourself with hormones that are going to decrease your natural production of hormones is not a good thing. Anyway, the
Sexual
yeah,
topic. There is no doubt that testosterone is the key to male sexuality. In his book, The Testosterone Syndrome, Dr. Eugene Shippen explains that pelvic/genital region is packed with testosterone receptors. He states, in fact, all the different structural components of the genital area, nerves, arteries, veins, muscles, are guided in their formation by testosterone and maintained in good working order throughout life by that very same hormone.
however, sexuality is far more complex than that. It's complicated by several interactive factors, including the fact that testosterone also affects the brain, influences sexual interest, attraction, arousal. In Super T, Dr. Carlos Ulis explains the effects that hormones can have on the following 8 separate aspects of human sexuality. Number 1, we got sexual interest or libido is related to spikes in testosterone level reaching brain receptors.
Number 2, attraction and arousal can be linked with male and female body odors or pheromones. A male who is low in testosterone will no longer be as pungent after a workout.
Sexual receptive is the third one. Is, well, it is and it isn't, because there is the
Pungent after a workout.
yeah, but that women are attracted to that.
Yeah.
You know, sexual receptivity. Well, you're not attracted to men, obviously, because you know.
No, but the odor of BO is not attractive.
Well, you know what it is. It's not your regular odor of BO. People eat crappy. So if people ate healthy, their BO wouldn't be so bad. It'd be like a normal, just pungent, musky type of BO. Like when you were just raw vegan, you know, and just eating fruits and veggies, you don't supposed to smell. But when you eat dead carcass animals and all this synthetic stuff, yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily say that I wasn't attracted to men, because I like either or. Okay. So
sexual receptivity is at its height for women when estrogen level peaks during the menstrual cycle. Men's receptivity is not cyclical, but it's more closely related to sexual function.
Oh, so it's whenever it's up.
Yeah, because it's all, we're based on reproduction, you know? I mean, it's like animals, you know how a male dog sniffs the female dog when they're in heat, and they know it's time to go do the thing? Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, it says women's receptivity is cyclical. Mm-hmm. So as nature has it, mm-hmm. things go in cycles, like the seasons, mm-hmm. the lunar phases of the moon, all these things are all tied together. So it's like, it's a world that men don't really have a part in.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, it's like,
and they're jealous, and that's why now they want to, because it's like they want to be beautiful. They wanted this. They wanted. It's like, sorry guys, not in this lifetime. You know, maybe the next, and you reincarnate. If you behave, you know, you might get the pleasure of coming back as a woman.
Sexual dysfunction for men is not as dependent upon testosterone as it is on nitric oxide, mm-hmm. which is what keeps the blood vessels in the penis open. However, estrogen and testosterone both play a role in women, which is to maintain the lubrication, sensitivity, and integrity of the vagina, labia, and clitoris.
Right, which is not properly created in an operating table to function the way that a natural born women's genitals are. Anyway, number 5, sexual pleasure and sensitivity are heightened for both sexes when testosterone level peaks, and women sometimes get a bit of testosterone therapy when they have low libido,
right?
You know, so that they're able to please their husbands and all that good stuff.
The experience of sexual orgasm is enhanced for both men and women by testosterone. The pituitary hormone, oxytocin, rises dramatically as well, enhancing skin and sexual organ sensitivity. I wanted to mention something, not the pituitary, but the fact that the endocrine system part of it is also like, there's an organ in the body that actually you would never think was actually part of the endocrine system, the pineal gland.
Yeah, and it talks about it.
That's
Yeah.
no,
Well, that's the pituitary. Pineal gland,
but
yeah.
the pineal, which is, you know,
Considered the third eye.
right.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's something more to sex than simply pleasure.
Right.
I think it's like
The Kundalini,
like
when you're supposed to reach, and that's what they used to say to get closer to God, and you do the
altered
Kundalini state, and you light up your chakras, and I mean, there's so much that human beings have not touched. They're bored. They're not being given the secret knowledge that were privy to in the past. I mean, we're just pretty much like pets right now. You know, hamster in the wheel. Get up, go to work. You know, when the weekend comes, hey,
whatever Facebook tells you.
Exactly. And so, why do you think everything is upsy-turvy or topsy-turvy or whatever the word is called? Topsy-turvy. Yeah. Number 7, sexual fulfillment is accomplished by the rise in oxytocin, something called touchy-feely hormone. Oxytocin. Oxytocin is enhanced. No, that stuff is lethal. Is enhanced by estrogen and antagonized by high testosterone level.
So, finally, sexual bonding or love in marriage is mediated in women by the estrogen-induced enhancement of oxytocin. For men, testosterone activates the pituitary hormone vasopressin, which causes them to pursue females and become territorial.
Which is the normal balance of things. So it's easy to see how sex hormone imbalance can affect multiple aspects of sexuality with a domino-like effect. In men, one of the first signs of testosterone deficiency is a diminished libido, which can lead to problems with sexual function and fulfillment, which then further compounds the problems because these are often tied to a man's sense of overall well-being and self-worth. In this way, sexual problems can contribute to mental or emotional problems, such as a damaged self-esteem, moodiness, and depression, which can further compound the sexual problems, and without treatment, the cycle continues. And
and then they perilously fall into transition.
And then after that, when everything's done, then they just disappear and become nuns.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because we have a theory about that. Yeah. That most, and no offense to Catholic nuns out there that are watching, but it seems like maybe most nuns are trans women.
Let me see how much more of this stuff we have, because I want to get into the Animus. Okay, so how does estrogen affect testosterone? The effects of testosterone are further complicated by its relationship to another sex hormone, estrogen, especially estradiol. As discussed earlier, the yin-yang balance between the estrogen hormone and testosterone is key for both men and women. Together, they define our sexuality.
Dr. Shippen believes that men's bodies would not have a process for making estrogen if it were useless to them. He identifies many estrogen-sensitive areas of the male body, including the brain, and explains that estrogen is an extremely important aspect of the brain chemistry that triggers natural sexual functions. He states, too little estrogen will neuter a man just as effectively as too little testosterone.
However, for most adult men, the problem is not too little estrogen, but too much. A primary cause of hormonal imbalance in men as they age is that testosterone is increasingly converted to estrogen, resulting in an excess of estradiol. Life Extension recommends that men maintain an estradiol level between 21.8 and 30.1 pg per milliliter. Similar to how women react to minute amounts of testosterone, men have a very small window of optimum effectiveness when it comes to estrogen.
So we're talking about the fact that after menopause, women have higher, lower estrogen levels than men do. Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And it's causing a lot of problems. That's why we're seeing men have the heart attack and the stroke and the diabetes and the this and that, and and the woman is like getting in more shape, and the husband is just falling along, and so I mean, what is going to happen to trans women and their health?
Scary. It's a scary proposition.
Why is no one really looking at this? Why are these endocrinologists not going, I know you think you're this, but your body is this. This is just not going to work.
And what we really don't know, and this is another thing that Philip Porter probably wants to talk about when he does come on our show, is the dangers that children are facing with these puberty blockers and these endocrine disrupting chemicals that are being pumped into their bodies. You know, I mean, it's like, I mean, don't they call them endocrine antagonists? I mean, it's like they shut platelet development down. I mean, we don't even know
mental development, which is the
going
key.
to happen.
You know, these kids are going to be adolescents or kids for the rest of their life because they didn't get the proper development.
It's crazy. Because the estrogen derived from aromatase actually displaces testosterone at the receptor sites. It has the effect of turning off testosterone-driven activities or regulating the force of those actions. In this way, estrogen and testosterone exist in a very delicate yin-yang balance. Estrogen is necessary to complete the whole, but it also keeps testosterone in check. While men need estrogen to make sexuality possible, it is also the complementary off switch.
Yeah. And it's, you know, a key here. That's why the yin and yang is a balance. And we're just getting ourselves completely out of balance with the way we eat, the way we sleep, the things we do during the course of the day, all these hormonal disruptors. I mean, it's crazy. Unfortunately, the switch can get stuck in the off position, as Shippen puts it. Like so many things that work well when we're young, the control mechanism aspect of estrogen can get out of hand as we grow older. Illness, drugs, dietary imbalances, stuff that I just mentioned, lifestyle, and certain aspects of normal aging help accelerate this process and raise estrogen levels to unhealthy heights.
According to Shippen, common causes of elevated estrogen levels in men are
age-related increase in aromatase activity,
changes in liver function,
obesity,
alcohol abuse.
We see a lot of that in the trans community, drug abuse, which we see a lot, marijuana. I mean, there's a lot of people in the trans community that are users.
They're using that as like another coping mechanism.
Yeah, as a numbing agent, you know.
Zinc deficiency.
Ingestion of estrogen-enhanced foods or substance.
If you use your microwave, pretty much count yourself in on that one.
Yeah.
Drug-related estrogen imbalances, over-the-counter pain relievers, and anti-inflammatories such as ibuprofen, acetaminophen, and aspirin, antibiotics, antifungal drugs, cholesterol-lowering drugs, antidepressants, and antipsychotics, heart and blood pressure medications like Spiro, and acids, and some vitamins, nutrients, and foods such as vitamin E and even grapefruit.
Yeah, since these problems are often interrelated, many men often have more than one estrogen-enhancing influence. At the same time, their bodies built in methods for eliminating estrogen also falter, which further contributes to the excess. Pretty sad stuff here. And, you know, you may not worry about it now. You're young, in your 20s, maybe those are in their 40s. But as we age, things that didn't matter as much when we were younger start to matter a heck of a lot. And dying is simple. There's people go, you gotta die of something. Yeah, hey, dying is dynamo if you just died. If life was so kind to you to just like not let you wake up the next morning. But the thing is, people don't just die. People suffer. As an occupational therapist working in the medical system, I've seen people suffer for their poor choices in life. Strokes, heart attack, MS, all sorts of neurological impairment. Going in the hospital, in and out to get all sorts of surgery. They cut you up, they open you. You're full of pain, and you're full of pain medication. It's not a pretty picture. Death, you would wish that you could die. Well, seriously, because I'm living with it. Well, but it's the truth, and we can't.
I mean, that's what
reality.
Work out.
Yeah, I know. But reality is that if we don't take care of ourselves now, as we age, it's not going to be pretty.
And that's the thing about the trans community. If you're taking any kind of synthetic hormone, you're already at a disadvantage greatly. You've already increased your chances of getting any kind of like more of a heart diseases and other things that might, you know, disrupt your life and things like that. And you may have also cut years of your life off by being on synthetic hormones over a long period of time. But you know, the fact is that you need to get outside. You need to start caring about your body, you need to start working out. You need to do these things even more so than a person who isn't on synthetic hormones of any kind.
And if you're at a certain age that you know that your body already has increased estradiol and your testosterone level is dropping, please don't be dumb and want high doses of estrogen, because it's, you're just sending yourself to the grave even faster.
And in a more painful manner.
Yeah, and it's not going to make you more feminine either, because the body's going to fight you. As we have mentioned before, we have seen a lot of trans women that look a heck of a lot better when they first started their transition than they do now. It's almost like the body is fighting what you're trying to do.
And on the same token, there are trans men out there that we didn't see with white hair a year ago.
It's like white hair. It's just like, because your body's going, hello, something's going on here, and it's just, the body is so forgiving, and it holds on as much as it can. You just don't die right away. It tries to like warn you and warn you and warn you. I mean, how many trans men are we seeing now that I know personally have a neurological impairment, in the hospital, they're sick, something is going on, their brain's not working right, they're scared shitless, but they don't for one moment go, hey, maybe I should quit this testosterone. I don't think this stuff is really good. My body's telling me something. Maybe I shouldn't worry so much about being misgendered, being angry all the time. Because all this anger and all this substance that you're putting into your body is causing your body to go wacko.
Yeah, and the fact is that, whether you don't want to describe yourself as a natal-born female, whether you want to deny biology or not, the fact is that women have less collagen in their skin than men do.
Yep.
So imagine you're taking testosterone, and it's not only drying out those bottom parts of your body, but it's also drying out
your skin.
Yeah. So you already have less collagen to work with. So do you think that it might not be a coincidence
No,
that
it's not a coincidence.
That this lack of the amount of collagen that men have,
and then adding
testosterone causes this premature aging to show up in lots and lots of trans men that you see?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a guy who's 46, or he doesn't identify as a guy, he actually identifies as a non-gender.
Yeah.
But his skin is absolutely dry, wrinkled.
Yeah.
He's the same age as me.
Yeah. And I'm a freak of nature, because my astral projection and the way that I look at life and the way I eat and the way that I look at things has helped me, keep a pretty young, by 52, I don't think, but not, and plus I have progestin-induced virilization. So my body actually does better on androgen than it ever did on estrogen. But not everybody has that. Not everybody is, have some form of intersex. So, you're dealing with cards that you don't want to play with. Anyway, we're going to share a little video here. Let me go here.
Oh, wait, I had a question.
Oh, a question. Okay.
I wonder why the opposite happens with many trans women who tend to appear younger when first starting on HRT.
That's the initial. That's why I said they start looking good in the beginning, but then 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, different ballgame altogether. They start getting older looking and overweight. Okay, so let's lay this here.
All right, so basically what the Anima and the Animus is in the Jungian psychological model is that they are two anthropomorphic archetypes, one representing the feminine, that's the Anima, and one representing the masculine, or the Animus. And so the theory goes that in every man, there is an unconscious feminine aspect called the Anima, and in every woman, there is an unconscious masculine aspect called the Animus. So if you think about it like a yin-yang symbol, it's kind of like the black dot within the white and the white dot within the black. So we each contain our inner opposites, making us psychologically androgynous. And Jung posited that it's very important for us to own our inner opposite traits. So if we're a man, we need to own our feminine side, and if we're a woman, we need to own our masculine side and not repress them away.
And this repressing, I believe, which comes a lot from religious beliefs, is what actually creates all the problems that we're seeing today. You know, because we're being told that, hey, if you're a girl, you can't be masculine. If you're a boy, you can't be feminine. Well, we all have that characteristics within us.
That's because if the anima and animus are not integrated, they become part of the shadow, and the shadow then gets projected out onto other people. So if we reject our masculine side, we will project that part of ourselves negatively out toward men. Or we will do the opposite with women. If we repress our anima, it will end up being projected onto all women in the group within our society. The way that Jung saw it was that men were ruled by logos, so the rational, the logical, the intellectual, and women were ruled by eros, or the loving, the caring, the compassionate, the unifying. And because the goal of creating a healthy ego is integration and becoming the most individualistic person and the strongest person that you can, he saw the lack of integration of our inner opposites as something that would stand in the way. So somebody who's undeveloped, their little yin-yang symbol, instead of having a full circle inside of the larger circle, they would have just mere pinpricks, was what he said. Also, with the anima and the animus being archetypes, this is part of our ancestral memory. And so even though it might be influenced by the external environment, and maybe our anima or animus might be associated with a particular type of person or even particular people, it really comes from that internal unconscious. And the animus and the anima, when fully integrated, they are actually mediators between the unconscious and spiritual and the conscious mind. And so to have a fully developed anima or animus is what we need to basically be complete in ourselves in order that we might access wisdom.
And I'm going to go ahead and put this remainder, because it's a pretty long video and we do have other stuff that we want to talk about regarding this, but it's very interesting.
It is.
What she's saying. So what I said earlier is like what we're thinking, I'm born in the wrong body. No, not, I mean, that is furthest from the truth. What it is that we have not been allowed to develop appropriately. Our development has been stunted by society, religion, you know, the in the box thing. Men have an inner woman and women have an inner man in them. I mean, that's just, you know, that's just the way it is.
I mean, there was a comment, actually a quote from Carl Jung, and it basically was talking about we discover that the other in us is indeed another, a real man who actually thinks, does, feels, and desires all the things that are despicable and odious. A whole man, however, knows that his bitterest foe, or indeed a host of enemies, does not equal that one adversary, the other self inside of oneself who dwells in his bosom. You know, so it's like there's, you know, it's like that ancient, you know, Indian proverb of the two wolves, you know, the good wolf and the bad wolf.
You can feed one or the other, depending. Yeah. And what I've seen in the trans community is that this very beautiful spiritual thing that was meant for us humans to integrate has gone into the dark side, which is what I like to call it. And it's become all about the physical and the cosmetic and the alteration of the bodies, which has absolutely nothing to do with that. It's about our spiritual growth, our wisdom, our knowledge, our integration of both our yin and our yang, so that we keep our egos at bay and lead from our hearts.
Now, another quote that he made was, if it, the shadow, is repressed and isolated from consciousness, it never gets corrected and is liable to burst forth suddenly in a moment of unawareness. At all events, it forms an unconscious snag, thwarting our most well-meant intentions.
And that's what we see. Middle-aged men, all of a sudden, have this crisis. say they're born in the wrong body, leave their family, leave their careers, do whatever it takes, all these surgeries, all these things, because it's a snack. It's like an abnormal coping mechanism that kicked in. When in reality, if we work with kids when they're young and allow their healthy integration, that's why these so-called gender variant kids are being pushed into one gender or the other. Let them play, let them express. It's natural. Don't put too much emphasis like, oh, you should be this, or oh, don't do that. That just stunts our development. I mean, it's very, very simple, but again, that doesn't sell surgeries, hormones, and creates this mega transitioning clinics that we're seeing this day and age. Anyway, let's talk a little bit more about this. Okay, as we know, it's Carl Jung's School of Analytical Psychology, and are the two primary anthropomorphic and archetypes of the unconscious mind, as opposed to both the thermorphic and inferior function of the shadow archetypes, as well as the abstract symbol set that, let me hit this here, oops, what did I do? Set that formulates the archetype of the self.
The anima and animus are described by Jung as elements of his theory of the collective unconscious, a domain of the unconscious that transcends the personal psyche. In the unconscious of a man, this archetype finds expression as a feminine inner personality, anima. Equivalently, in the unconscious of a woman, it is expressed as a masculine inner personality, animus. The anima and animus can be identified as the totality of the unconscious feminine psychological qualities that a man possesses, or the masculine ones possessed by a woman, respectively.
It is an archetype of the collective unconscious and not an aggregated of father or mother, brother, sister, aunts, uncles, or teachers. Through these aspects of the personal unconscious can influence the person for good or ill.
Because a male sensitivity is often lesser or repressed, the anima is one of the most significant autonomous complexes of all. It is said to manifest itself by appearing in dreams. It also influences a man's interactions with women and his attitudes towards them, and vice versa for women and the animus.
I mean, you look at the radical feminism and the war against men, and then men treating women the way they do. It's very, very evident that there's some sort of battle going on, but it's an internal battle that is being, like she mentioned earlier, it's being brought on to the external. Jung said that the encounter with the shadow is the apprentice piece in the individual development, that with the anima is the masterpiece. Jung viewed the anima process as being one of the sources of creative ability. I mean, what does majority of trans women want? And it's like they want to make themselves beautiful, and they become this project.
Right.
Glitter, lights, sparkles, you know. Okay, so
anima and animus, we all have both feminine and masculine energies.
yeah.
Men must learn to nurture, and women must decide and act. At midlife, men and women are often at cross purposes.
That's what we talk about, the middle age, what happens, you know, and it's, you see it, and it's even physically, the body's preparing for it with a decline in hormones and all that stuff. Two final aspects of personality remain for consideration in regards to midlife development. Jung postulates that each individual has both masculine and feminine components of the psyche.
For a male, the feminine component is the anima, and for a female, it is the animus. Part and parcel of human biological and psychological development is this mixture of masculine and feminine energies. And
they have to come to the point of creating some sort of balance, or else things go awry. These energies are theoretical constructs or concepts which are useful for explanation but are not identical with gender. The separation of these concepts from gender is very difficult to maintain in the English language because of the similarity of words. Masculine energy and male and feminine energy and female seem to be the same but are not. The concept may be better understood if viewed from a different context.
In Eastern cultures, the Tao symbol, with its yin and yang energies, is expressive of the same idea. The Tao symbol, consisting of a circle divided in two equal portions, each containing an element of the other, indicates that all of the creation is composed of two energies held in harmony and interaction.
The yang energy is masculine in nature and is described as light, dry, directed, focused, logical, and action-oriented. Yin energy is feminine and described as dark, moist, diffuse, vague, intuitive, and receptive. In regards to psychological functioning, men are predominantly yang but contain a yin aspect. Women, while predominantly yin, contain an element of yang. Thus, human beings are psychologically androgynous with latent inner masculine and feminine energies awaiting development. Yet we're being totally stunted all the time.
So these energies are latent, kind of like they're waiting to start to grow.
Exactly.
It's like,
and by the time it's like, don't do that. That's too girly or too manly or you know.
In the first half of life, a differentiation of the primary sexual identity and corresponding energy takes place, but in later life, a call to integrate the opposite energy, the anima or the animus, arises. This is a move towards wholeness.
And what happens with the trans community, they get the missed signal and they just think, well, now I'm supposed to become a woman. And it's like, that's why they're never happy. That's why that voice at the end of the run speaks. At most basic and simplistic level, what happens is that men begin to develop their capacity for relationships and must come to terms with emotions, vulnerability, and needs, while women begin to become more decision and action-oriented, in the process claim their independence, courage, power, and wisdom. At midlife, women are called to decide and do, while men are called to nurture.
This process is seen in what Gail Sheehy in her book Passages refers to as the switch 40s.
And 140 with the...
This is the time in midlife when men in their roles of husband and father begin a return to the values of home and family. They are drained from their years in the work world at the same time that women as wives and mothers whose children are leaving home begin to experience a pull to the world of work. A switching of roles is taking place, but may not be recognized as such.
A woman who has been in the caretaking role begins to want to establish her own independence through actions and accomplishments. An impetus is provided to seeking employment, education, or career. At the same time, a man had often had enough work and career. He recognizes the stifling effect of his personal development. He now needs to open himself to relationships and emotions. But when he does, he finds no one at home.
The children are now increasingly independent and on their way out of the family by way of work or college. His wife, who may have eagerly sought his companionship when he was too busy, now is after a business of her own. The potential for significant relationship conflict arises as these two people are crossing paths on different trajectories. They are moving towards the earlier interests of the other. Each person is in the process of integrating the opposite masculine or feminine energy. Men must incorporate the inner feminine with its call for relatedness, while women must respond to the inner masculine and the need for action.
The anima and animus can influence a person in either a positive or negative manner. If a man is under the influence of the positive anima, he will show tenderness, patience, consideration, and compassion. The negative anima manifests as vanity, moodiness, bitchiness, and sensitivity to hurt feelings, which is...
What you're
a woman with a positive anima shows assertiveness, control throughout rationality, and compassionate strength. But it's interesting. It's really hitting the nail on the head. I lost myself staring. And the negative animus reveals in strong opinions, ruthlessness, destructive forces, and always the last word. Both men and women are on the path to their own integration and must struggle with the interpersonal ramifications of the anima and the animus.
This process can be complicated by cultural influences. The impact of early women's movement motivated women to leave the home for the workplace. In doing so, these women had to take on a traditional masculine role if they were to succeed. They had to become competitive and more assertive. They had to internalize their emotions and be more, quote, logical, unquote. As a result, these women at midlife may find that they have already developed the animus or the masculine energy. What they need to do is to integrate the feminine back into their lives. The men who have worked at being liberated, quote unquote, have developed their feminine side and may need to catch up on the masculine. The, quote, wild man, unquote, of the recent men's movement may be the symbol of recapturing the masculine energy.
And interesting, when we spoke to Philip, it's almost like, you know, that integration back, reclaiming his manhood. When it comes time to integrate the opposite energetic component, you may have to do careful review of where you are in the individuation process before identifying the task ahead. The basic question is, what is the current balance of the masculine and feminine energies in your life, and what needs further development?
Moving towards wholeness, at midlife, there is a deep call for wholeness. As we grow and develop, we choose from the opposites of personality to establish our sense of self. We develop our ego, capital letter I, in this manner. The task of the first half of life is to develop personality to the best of our ability so we can live and function in the world. However,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
okay. However, our development inherently becomes one-sided. One of the opposites of personality is chosen and emphasized at the expense of the other.
You become the best introvert you can, but remain an underdeveloped extrovert, so social settings make you very uncomfortable. Or you become the best of thinkers who is out of touch with the feeling side of life. Your intuition may be excellent, but you get overwhelmed in the many details of daily life. At midlife, there arises a deep call for wholeness. It comes from the individuation process that is propelling growth. The underdeveloped must be developed if we are to be fully functioning people.
Without this urge towards wholeness, we may remain like a lopsided wheel trying to roll downhill. We are awkward and can get out of control. At midlife, the meaning and purpose of the first half of life begins to fail. The agenda changes. It is no longer focused on differentiation, but integration. We must give up the identity we work so hard to get so we can become more. There's a crisis of meaning. Life often seems to fall apart. Signs and symptoms arise to get our attention, so we will make the change.
At this time we ask, is this all that there is? This is a spiritual question, and midlife takes us into a quest for a deeper and more powerful spirituality. The midlife problem is that all of this change is extraordinarily difficult and can be both greatly resisted and denied. Midlife offers the opportunity to become whole, but the journey does not have to be taken. You may retreat into the stagnation pattern of holding on to youth.
At midlife, you must be willing to die so you can be reborn. You must die to the old self that has become egocentric so you can shape yourself. This entails a certain amount of suffering and confrontation from which many flee. However, to become a whole person, the journey must be taken. I was interested in talking about, like what Pearl means and her husband, and how Pearl in these indigenous, cultures, they find a purpose for women after the time of birth and after menopause. These women, like they're respected for their wisdom and for their ability, and it's like, their purpose in life changes.
Yeah, and as the men, they become more meek and they become more nurturing.
Right, like we saw that her husband had become more of a support to his wife, more nurturing, more, like less.
Would brush her hair and things of that nature, and became more of like, okay, she's done all this for me throughout life and our kids. Now it's my turn to be loving and supportive, and and like I said, all this synthetic, all this stuff that we're seeing is turning our world upside down. And I think that if we look more into the spiritual, because Jung was very much into the spiritual, not religious, but spiritual, becoming in tune with earth, with the cycles, with your inner being. Get to know who you truly are, not your external, not what you see in the mirror and then fuss over, and on the internal, and learn to balance yourself. Steps of managing midlife.
Recognize that it is as normal.
Know that it is an internal task. It's nothing to do with the external.
Confront the suffering of letting go, change, and growth.
Be open to spiritual growth, awakening, and challenge. Ultimately, midlife is taking you to a new and deeper level of meaning.
What meaning will work for you? What is a truly workable meaning for life? Spiritual and psychological traditions all agree. It is to become a generative person. In the simplest language, it means to fully love your neighbor as yourself. It is to follow the golden rule. It is to be of service to others.
Midlife is taking you to your true self and challenging you to the creative journey of making that which is greater manifest the world.
Amen. No.
Hallelujah, brother. No, but seriously, looking at this and looking at what is happening to a lot of people in the world, does it not ring a bell that something is happening internally, that we are not getting the proper signals and we're not properly being directed? It's almost like we need a bunch of shamans to help people with this, because that's what happened in the tribes. There were shamans and people to help deal with this midlife, what we like to call crisis, which is not really a crisis, it's just a midlife adjustment.
Refocusing.
Yes. Instead of getting sex changes and getting a pair of breasts and addictomy and cutting your arms and taking hormones, that's not what it's about. It's not.
It's much more.
It's deep.
Internal.
Deep,
yeah. And the fact is that those two energies both exist and have coexisted in every human being.
In every culture, it's part of who we are. The yin and the yang. It's so needed, and the integration of it's so important for our healthy emotional and mental and spiritual development. And this is why we see people on Prozac. We see people going to therapy all the time. We see people that are not happy, no matter they've set a goal, they reach that goal, and they're still not happy. We see it in the transgender community. We see it in the regular community of people. They go to college, they get a degree, they start working, and they're still not happy. Why? Because you're not balancing yourself. You're not really looking within.
Oh, nice people.
What? We're not even going to read that.
Yeah.
Because that's just, we're not going to.
Nothing but love from haters.
Haters. And people that are not well developed, and they resort to things of that nature. Because what happens is, if you're not well developed, then you become neurotic, and neurosis takes over your life, and you become foul-mouthed haters, people that cannot understand and cannot communicate. But all we can do is send them love. Mwah! Hopefully the healing will begin soon, and hopefully life will bring you joyous things instead of the darkness that you live in right now.
Because, whatever you do, you're watching. So, that must mean something.
Exactly.
So whatever you're doing, just realize that whatever you say towards someone that is negative and hurtful and mean-spirited, it actually boomerangs right back at you. Yeah. It's not my will to wish anything evil on anybody, but what you do comes back to you. So, it's like you reap what you sow. Yeah. So, that's just the fact. Yeah. People like that, they end up hurting themselves,
and they have nothing else better to do than to, And one of the things that Philip was talking about, because he's been around a lot of trans women, says he's never seen a group of people that are so attention starved. No matter what they do, they want more and more and more of it.
Yep. There's people that are, not just attention starved, but appearance starved. Oh, yeah. They have to become the 5.0, 6.0, 10.0 version of themselves. And it's like, there's so many times that you can remake the Rocky film before Rocky gets old.
Yeah.
And, it was like, you watch enough of the movies and stuff like that, and it's like, is this guy going to get finally old enough to not want to compete anymore? And it's like, eventually you get worn out,
And if you don't, and there's a critical period, if you don't capture that critical period and do what you're supposed to do during that time, you're going to find yourself hurting. And not just physically hurting, but emotionally and spiritually hurting. And it's sad, because a lot of people in this community are really, really needing help, and they're being given the wrong kind of solution, the wrong kind of help. And, all I have to say is shame on gender specialists, shame on WPATH, shame on the people that are egging on this kind of movement that think for one moment that women are just an object of sexual gratification, that body parts like breasts and vaginas are just there for sexual pleasure and for autogynephilic type of behaviors. Women, we are more than objects, and as a species, we should be respected and loved. We all have a mother, and we all were born from a woman. And I think just that alone should bring some sort of respect. And to think that we could just magically wave a wand and change our gender is ludicrous, because it cannot be done. And it's not about changing anything. It's about integrating you as a man, integrating your feminine abilities, integrating your nurturing abilities, not about what bra size you want to wear. So, I mean, can't say much more.
No, it's, it's hard to put all together, because here we are looking like this, and
well, no, everyone makes mistakes in life, and it's not hard to put together. I mean, if everybody had a manual and we all knew, if I knew this information that I know today back then, I wouldn't be looking like this. I could guarantee you. If I hadn't taken steroids to bodybuild and had altered my mind, I wouldn't be looking like this, guaranteed. Trans identify individuals, before they actually start going on estrogen, have more of an ability to have a rational mind than after they start the hormones, because it just sends you on a roller coaster. So it's like, take it from the horse's mouth of someone who's lived this and has been around many trans people. You're going to do what you want to do. It is your life, your prerogative. But I could honestly tell you, it's not going to solve anything. And as will other people that have lived in this life. And after the years go by, that inner voice will tell you, this is not what it was about. You were supposed to integrate both your masculine and feminine energy. You're supposed to grow as an individual. This is not about aesthetics. This is not about sexualization. It's not about the BDSM. It's not about all these things that this community embraces. It's about loving self and loving others. And realize that you're not born wrong. You're born exactly the way you were meant to be born. Society is the one that needs to change, not you. And I guess that's pretty much it. We've kind of covered all of our topics. I'm going to go ahead and put that link to their video on the description so you guys can finish watching it. I think it's very, very interesting, the whole concept.
There's a lot. I mean, people study Carl Jung for years. They take classes in universities and stuff. I never really had the opportunity to do that, but
Who's starting HRT?
Says the loss of my rationality was my biggest doubt about starting HRT. Yeah, Jonas said that, and losing your rational mind is a huge thing. Because when you do plunge into starting on hormones, they really do affect your brain, and they affect your rationale, your ability to make
rational
decisions that that in your mind earlier you would never have thought or contemplated such things. But it's like you do things that you would never have done. Right. I mean, with you taking all those steroidal type of hormonal drugs and things like that, I mean, that affected your female brain. It masculinized the brain, did it not?
It surely did. Not only the brain, it started the secondary characteristics. So when I heard about this whole transgender thing, it was like I was already dealing with having to shave, and I was all paranoid about, oh my God, what's happening? Because you usually don't get all the information when you start doing things like that. You think about the muscle, the androgen affected the muscle, but I didn't think about the secondary characteristics, losing my hair, losing my singing voice. I didn't think of all this stuff. And then when all of a sudden stuff starts to happen, you're like, oh my God, you're almost like, that's it, the roller coaster's going down. You can't jump off, kind of thing. And
right. Yeah, and I would encourage anybody who's thinking about starting hormones and stuff, to really give it a second thought, because once you go down that road, it's a very, very dangerous place to be. Because, I mean, I know after I started to take hormones, that's when my whole life started to change. I mean, I made decisions. I moved out of the house and I got an apartment, and I drove down and picked up a transgender woman to be a friend of mine, and I mean, all these things. And then I ended up moving, and all these things happened, and it was like this huge like snowball effect that happened. And you really do start to believe that you are actually meant for this, and that you're really supposedly changing so much. And honestly, for a trans woman who's starting to take HRT and all that, you think that things are more than they appear. It's like objects appear bigger than they are. It's like in a side view mirror, you get that image. It can look bigger, and the truth is that the changes are subtle.
It's hard to get rid of the secondary characteristics.
But I mean, they're not that massive, the changes. And I just see so many trans women a year in, 2 years in, they're all like celebrating their 1 year anniversary or their 6 months or whatever. And it's like, really, if you look at the picture before and you look at the picture after, they say that they see such a huge difference. It's like, okay, so your hair's longer, your bone structure doesn't really change.
No, neither does your DNA, chromosome. Nothing about the fact.
A lot of times you get bigger.
And as you get older, the
changes are even less.
And you actually start reverting because, as we mentioned earlier, the use of hormones are horrific on, the male body. The estradiol of the aging male is very detrimental to your health.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
Very, very dangerous. So a frill for a few years is not worth it because, in the end, there's too much to lose and not a lot to gain. And life involves more than just having fun. Being a woman is not about the cosmetic procedures that many are entailing or going through. Being a woman is a lot more. You have to be born a girl to grow into a woman. And the same thing, you have to be born a boy to grow into a man. So we're different people. We have, different, and some of us are meant to have a little bit more of a masculine energy, others meant to have a little more feminine energy, but it doesn't mean that we're fortified that sex because we feel we are.
Jonas says, exactly, they are powerful. I asked Walt Heyer if I could transition with just HRT, so I could always detransition. But he told me that they can drive you to have SRS.
Exactly, because it's like, there's no such thing as just taking a little bit of cocaine or taking a little bit of drug or just doing a little hit of heroin. Once you hit that road, you want more and more and more.
And most trans women are on that path.
Yeah. Until they get destroyed.
Especially late onset transitioners, they are on that path. And if they have a hint of autogynephilia in them, that becomes the highest level of autogynephilic satisfaction in knowing that, okay, first it starts off with the breasts. You want to have boobs, right? And then after that, you get your facial feminization, right? And then after that, you're like, I am already there. So all I need left to cross the sex chasm is to get a vagina. And they will spend their money and they will go, especially if they've had a great career and they have a good job and they have a pension fund or a 401k, and they blow their savings and they end up doing this thing.
And then to still not be happy.
And then because of the late set, secondary characteristics that have been there for years and years and decades. They're dissatisfied and they're empty. And they usually end up with a dog or a cat. And they're talking about how good life used to be or how they wish that they had a man in their life. Because, you know, although they weren't really interested in men before, all of a sudden that autogynephilic type of, you know, desire wants to have even more of an experience as a female.
Or they want to become a model, an actress, and an activist, you know. And it's just, it's behavior that has not been geared towards the right integration. People need to do more spiritual work, because I truly believe the psychological arena cannot and does not know how to deal with this. So I believe that going into more of a spiritual, meditative, eating right, drinking water with apple cider vinegar and lemon, and eating as much healthy, wholesome foods as you can, exercise, get out in nature, fill your mind with positive and natural things, get away from the dark side. And I call it the dark side because gender energy is beautiful and has a light side and has a dark side. You don't want to go to that dark side. You want to be able to evolve in the light. And I guess if they don't have any, does he say anything else? Or is
Nope, that's it.
All right,
That's
guys.
it.
Well, thank you for tuning in. Stay tuned next Tuesday. We'll have some more exciting stuff for you. We're hoping to get a few other guests. Like I said, Philip is wanting to be on the show. He's in the process of moving, so probably in a couple of weeks we'll probably have him. If you know of anyone that wants to be on the show, that has great information, has had life story to share, that transition, all of a sudden that inner voice started talking to them, you know, please send them our way to transitionradioshow@gmail.com. If you've enjoyed our show and what we're doing, you can visit our website. We have a donate button, and we never ask for anything, but, you know, if you have anything to spare and, you know, you enjoy what we do, then you're more than welcome. Visit the
We would love
website.
to get, you know, out there on the speaking circuit to be able to kind of counter some of the theories that are being promoted in the transgender community, and to offer kids another option, you know, in not necessarily having to, you know, accept the fact that they're different, you know, and, you know, but just to accept themselves and to love themselves, and not to give in to giving up on themselves.
Right, and not to look at themselves as faulty, you know, to develop their self-esteem, realize how talented and loving they are, to use their energies, and I mean energies as far as like that yin and yang that we have inside, to do creative things to help the world. Because this is not just about me, the individual, or you, the individual, or just you, the individual out there. This is a collective consciousness. We need each other, and we're here to help one another. It's not about the surgeries that you're going to get and how happy you're going to be. If you get yourself out of yourself and start being more of what this development says, to be more altruistic, I guess is the word, you know, then life will be much better. All right, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we love you. But remember to love yourselves too. Have a good one. And good night.
Good night.
Good night.